Welcome back to the Prajna series by Nasin Palasamudram. In this segment, we turn our focus to the fundamentals of GST returns and delve into one of its key components, GSTR 1. Guiding us through this essential topic is Shri Rajesh V. George, Assistant Director, who will explain the basics of GSTR 1 and walk us through the various aspects involved in the filing of GSTR 1.
What I plan to do is I talk to you about these various returns that are there. I talk to you about the GSTR 1, GSTR 2A, GSTR 2B, GSTR 3B, GSTR 9, 9C. I think that is what we cover in this particular subject, particular session that we do today. And as far as possible, I focus largely on the returns which are actually, or statements which are GSTR 1, 2A, 2B, the returns in 3B, and the flow of data in these returns. So this is the purpose of what we are going to do today. Let me start with the GSTR 1. Let me give you a little detail or a brief understanding of what GSTR 1 is all about. And then we will talk about the various tables that are there in GSTR 1, the various tables that are there in 2A, 2B, 3B. That is what we will try and do today. Now, when you say GSTR 1, the first thing that comes to your mind is the fact that it is provided under Section 37, Rule 59 of the CGST rules. Now, GSTR 1 is filed, it is nothing but details of outward supplies. Now, I was telling you about the various different taxpayers that are in place. You have the normal taxpayer, you have the composition levy, you have the non-resident, you have till about UN bodies. That's what I told you, the NC, no ITC, U. That is how you will remember, NC, no ITC, U. You will remember the various different types of taxpayers are there. Now, if I were to ask you, or if you were to respond, despite the fact that I told you a normal taxpayer files a GSTR 1, if you go and read Section 37(1) of the CGST Act, it does not tell you that a normal taxpayer files a GSTR 1. It tells you taxpayers other than C2, that is composition levy, OEDR, composition levy, non-resident taxable person, a non-resident online service provider, input service distributor, a TDS and a TCS person. These people are not required to file a GSTR 1. That means, other than these taxpayers, whoever is registered in GST needs to file a GSTR 1. Why do you think it is, instead of telling that a normal taxpayer needs to file a GSTR 1, the law says, or Section 37(1) tells you that it should be other than a composition levy person, a non-resident taxable person, a OEDR person, or a non-resident online service provider, an input service distributor, a TDS or a TCS, is the fact that there is another small category of taxpayers similar to a non-resident taxable person. You have his counterpart, a non-resident taxable person is based outside India. If there is a person who is based in India who wants a temporary registration, he applies for what is called as a casual taxable person. So, a normal taxable person and a casual taxable person, indirectly Section 37 tells you that a normal taxable person and a casual taxable person needs to file a GSTR 1. Once you tell that who are the different types of taxpayers who need to file a GSTR 1, the second aspect that you need to actually cover in this particular understanding of GSTR 1 is the fact that what is the periodicity of this GSTR 1? What is the periodicity of this GSTR 1? Till about 31/12/2020, there is a particular periodicity, and from 1/1/2021, there is a different periodicity involved. What is it till 31/12/2020? Here, I think the PPT, because of the screen resolution, there is a little movement from this one. Kindly bear with me. Now, till 31/12/2020, if there was a normal taxpayer whose turnover was less than 1.5 crores. Now, if his turnover was less than 1.5 crores, he had an option to file a quarterly GSTR 1. He could file a quarterly GSTR 1. But whereas if his turnover was in excess of 1.5 crores, he needed to mandatorily file a monthly GSTR 1. That is, every month, he needed to file a GSTR 1 on a monthly basis. That is, if his turnover was in excess of 1.5 crores. But now from 1/1/2021 it changes, and it says that if the turnover was greater than 5 crores, only then it is mandatory to file a monthly GSTR1. If the taxpayer's turnover is less than 1.5 less than 5 crores, he had an option to file a quarterly GSTR1. He can still continue to file a monthly GSTR1, but he had an option, if his turnover was less than 5 crores, to file a quarterly GSTR1. Now, once you talk about the periodicity, the next aspect that you need to cover is the fact that, what is the time limit within which this monthly GSTR1 has to be filed? What is the time limit within which the quarterly GSTR1 has to be filed? The monthly GSTR1 has to be filed by the 11th of the following month. It has to be by the 11th of the following month. Now, there is something that I spoke to you about, an invoice furnishing facility. Now, visualize that there is a quarterly taxpayer. That is, a person who files a quarterly GSTR1. Now, for the first 2 months, that means, let's say for an example, if I were to take January 25 to March 25. For January 25 to March 25, the GSTR1 on a quarterly basis has to be filed by the 22nd of April. The 13th of the month, that is 13th of April is when he needed to file. 22nd is for the GSTR 3B. For the GSTR 1 on a quarterly basis, he had to file it by the 13th of April. That is for January 25 to March 25. Now, what happens to the first 2 months of the quarter? That is for January and February. He has made supplies to registered person who want to take credit in the same month of January and February. So there is an option that is provided from 1/1/2021. That is when this scheme called as QRMP, or a quarterly return monthly payment scheme, came into effect from 1/1/2021. There is an invoice furnishing facility for the first 2 months of the quarter. So the first 2 months of the quarter, also now if it is for the January month of the quarter, he needs to file his invoice furnishing facility by the 13th of February. Similarly, for February 2025, he needs to file it by March 13th, 2025. Now, is there a value limit for this invoice furnishing facility? He can reflect in his invoice furnishing facility only to the extent of 50 lakh rupees. That is, the supplies made during the first 2 months, that is if it is in January, if it exceeds 50 lakhs and it is 60 lakh rupees, he can reflect only 50 lakhs in his invoice furnishing facility. So that is a cutoff limit with reference to an invoice furnishing facilities. Now, look at this particular perspective that I have made a mistake in my GSTR1. I have made a mistake in entering the data in the GSTR1. I told you that before I file my GSTR3B, I can correct the same in the form GSTR1A. Now, it so happens that I have already filed my GSTR3B. Now, after I file my GSTR3B, the information that is reflected in the GSTR1, is it possible to amend? Or now the question that comes your way is, you need to think whether a taxpayer who has filed his GSTR1 made a mistake in some of the tables or all of the tables in his GSTR1, whether he should be permitted to amend that particular table or amend the entry made in that particular table of a particular tax period. Now, Section 37 again provides that it is very much possible, like it is also possible that, when I reflected the data in the GSTR1, I may have missed out entering certain details also. Or I could have made some mistake in the entry of those particular details. That particular information that is there, I told you that it can be corrected if it is before he files the GSTR3B using the GSTR1A. Now, if he has already filed his GSTR3B and he realizes that he has made certain mistakes in the GSTR1, Section 37 permits a taxpayer to amend the details pertaining to the data that is entered in a particular table in a particular GSTR1. So, for example, what does it mean? What am I trying to tell you? I have made certain errors in April 2025 GSTR1. The due date for the GSTR3B, which was 20th of May, has already gone by. I've already filed my GSTR3B. I notice it on 22nd or on the 25th of May that I've made a mistake, or my recipient has informed me that, I have made a mistake. Does the law allow the taxpayer to amend that particular entry? The law does permit the taxpayer to amend that entry. It allows the taxpayer to amend the entry, but the system logic is built in such a way that amendment pertaining to a particular tax period, that is, amendment pertaining to a particular table in a particular, say for example, in table 5 or in table 4A of your GSTR 1 for April can be amended only once. That means amendment is very much possible, but the amendment is restricted by the system that he can amend that particular entry only once. As we go along, when I talk to you about the various tables that are there, it will become more clear to you as to what I mean that you can amend it only once. Let me just go forward. Now, once you say that an amendment is possible, the second question that you need to answer is, and I already told you the fact that the system allows the amendment only once. What you need to now draw a conclusion is, can the amendment be done at any period in time? That is, if there is an amendment to be carried out in, say, April 2023 GSTR 1, can the taxpayer correct that particular entry even in May 2025? Can it be at any period in time? The GST laws actually provides a cutoff date or a period within which the amendment has to happen. So what it says is, if your GSTR 1 actually pertains to till 2021 onwards, the amendment can happen till September of the next financial year. What does it mean? Say for example, in April 2019, I filed a GSTR 1. And I noticed that there is a mistake in my GSTR 1 for April 2019. Till when can I correct the entry in the April 2019 GSTR 1? I can do it till September 2020. I can do it till September 2020. Whereas, if it is from the period 2021-22 onwards, the amendment can happen till 30th of November of the next financial year. What does it mean? It means that there is a mistake that I made in my April 2024 or April 2023 GSTR 1. The amendment can happen with reference to any GSTR 1 filed before 30th of November 2024. That is, April 2023 GSTR 1, if there is an amendment pertaining to that particular GSTR 1, the amendment can happen till 30th of November of 2024. Now, once you are put in place as to why I spoke to you about who needs to file a GSTR 1, the periodicity, the due date, and whether an amendment is possible, now comes to the last part, which last few things that you need to know about a GSTR 1 is the fact that, is there a circumstance in which the system does not allow filing of a GSTR 1 due to certain reasons. Okay, the first reason is that there are four reasons or four situations because of which the system does not allow a taxpayer to file his GSTR 1. GSTR 1 has to be continuous. It means that, if I have not filed the GSTR 1 for March 2025, the system will not allow the taxpayer to file his April GSTR 1. So, if he has not filed the previous GSTR 1, the next GSTR 1, the system will not allow him to file. So, it has to be continuous. The second situation is, if the GSTR 3B of a tax period is not filed, then the next GSTR 1 cannot be filed. Again, come back to this example. The taxpayer has filed his GSTR 1 for March 2025. But he has not filed the GSTR 3B for March 2025. System will not allow the taxpayer to file his April 2025 GSTR 1. That is the second situation. Now, when I spoke to you about the various reasons that are there, reasons why we focus on the returns of a normal taxpayer, I was talking to you about the mismatch between a GSTR 1 and the GSTR 3B. Now, whenever there is a GSTR 1 GSTR 3B mismatch, the system communicates this mismatch to the taxpayer in the form which is called as DRC 1B. I think it is under Rule 88C of the CGST rules. Under this particular provision, if there is a mismatch, like the mismatch, if you recall the example that I gave you, in that particular first line entry, it was actually 85 crores was the GSTR 1 value. The GSTR 3B value was about 20 crores. There was a mismatch of 65 crores. If there is such a mismatch that is noticed by the system communicates this mismatch to the taxpayer in the form which is called as DRC 1C. Now, what is I think it is DRC 1B, sorry. Rule 88C, DRC 1B Now, the mismatch, once it is communicated to the taxpayer has two options. One is he can explain the reasons for that mismatch within 7 days after he receives the DRC-1B, or if he finds that 65 crores was actually genuinely made a mistake in that, he needs to pay the 65 crores. If one of these two things are not done, either a reply within 7 days, I think it is 7 working days, or the difference amount is not paid back, the system will not allow the taxpayer to file his next GSTR1. I'm giving you the reasons where system will not allow a taxpayer to file his GSTR1. That is what I'm talking to you about. That is the third reason. Now, it is also very much possible that the input tax credit available as per the GSTR 2B, the input tax credit available as per the GSTR 2B, and the input tax credit availed as per the GSTR 3B, there could be a mismatch. That means there is a GSTR 2B 3B mismatch. Now, whenever there is a 2B 3B mismatch, you will remember it is a mismatch in the input tax credit availed. Now, if there is a difference in the input tax credit that is availed, that particular mismatch is communicated back to the taxpayer in the form which is called as DRC-1C. And the rule for that is, I think, Rule 88D of the CGST rules. Now, if there is a communication of this mismatch report in the form DRC-1C to the taxpayer, again the taxpayer needs to actually respond to that mismatch. There could be any reason that he feels genuinely that the mismatch is due to a certain genuine reason. He needs to communicate back on the system to that particular mismatch notice of DRC-1C within 7 working days. Or if he feels that actually the mismatch is actually correct, the difference that is shown or highlighted in DRC-1C is actually he has taken excess credit or whatever it is, that mismatch, if he pays it back, then that particular DRC-1C is settled. So now, in case the taxpayer does not respond back within 7 working days, he does not give a reply to the DRC-1C, he does not give a reply to DRC-1C, or he does not pay the difference between difference that is shown in the DRC-1C statement, the system will not allow the taxpayer to file his next GSTR1. So the first reason is the fact that the previous GSTR1 is not filed, so the next GSTR1 cannot be filed. Now, the GSTR 3B of a particular tax period is not filed, the GSTR1 of the next tax period cannot be filed. The system will not allow the taxpayer. Now, there is a DRC-1B or a DRC-1C notice, no response within 7 working days, or the difference that is shown in the 1B or the 1C notice is not paid back, the system will not allow the taxpayer to file his GSTR1. The last reason is at the time of applying for a GST registration, one of the details that needs to be reflected is the bank account details. The law provides, I think it is Rule 10, provides that a taxpayer can update his bank account detail within 45 days after he gets his registration. Now, if the taxpayer does not update his bank account details within that 45 specified time limit that is provided under Rule 10 of the CGST rules, that is 45 days, the system will not allow the taxpayer to file his GSTR1. So you have 4 circumstances in which GSTR1 cannot be filed. And finally, that you need to answer is the fact that if there is something that I've done with my GSTR1, if there's some error or something that is wrong in my GSTR1 on the data that is reflected in the GSTR1, if there is some mistake in that. Now, does the law say that his registration is liable to be cancelled? Yes, it very much says that if the difference between the R1 and the R3B is beyond a specified limit. Rule 21 says that, yeah, his registration can be cancelled. It's liable for cancellation. So this is our brief understanding of the GSTR1 that is in place. Now, GSTR1, if you want to just read a little more about, I've just tried to put down the points that are there in section 37 and Rule 59, whatever is there. I have tried to put it down in this particular slide, but my focus is not with reference to this particular information. When you do, I've always believed that, when you do a particular session, especially something that is do with GST topic, rather than focusing on the various sections and the rules that are there in place, you definitely need to actually, whatever I say, beyond finally whatever the CGST Act and the rules say, it has to match with that. There's no doubt about it. But I have always believed the fact that, if we are able to build the understanding based on the general awareness of the audience, whatever general awareness the audience has, if I'm able to build a concept, if I'm able to get that understanding based on that general awareness, I think, and then match it with the provision of the law that is there, I think that is the best possible way to learn.
In the next episode, we will begin exploring GST returns, focusing on the concept of time of supply and the key documents involved in the GSTR 1 filing process.